What's that story you've never been able to tell? In 6th grade, we had this paper we had to write. I forget what the subject was. I decided to procrastinate a lot. Then the day it was due rolled around, and I had nothing. We had to read our papers out loud in front of the class. I was totally prepared to take the 0. But then I realized he wasn't actually taking the papers we used. So I decided to go up to the front of the class with a blank sheet of paper and improvise. I ended up getting an 80. The time my mum needed to go back into the house to get a scarf. Because of this we were held back and missed a bus by 10 seconds. That bus then crashed into a bridge at very high speed because the bus driver had mental health problems. It is the closest I have ever been to death. I will never complain about my mum going back to get a scarf in my life again. One of the first times I invited my girlfriend to spend the night at my college apartment. I went to bed early. We're both gamers. But I'm an early bird and she's a night owl. She reassured me I could go to sleep without her because, little did I know, she had plans to unlock Toadette, and the special cup in Mario Kart, DD for the GameCube. My apartment complex had very strict parking. There were only 2 parking passes for me and my roommate. But I encouraged my girlfriend to park in the lot anyway because I'd never seen a friend get towed in the couple of years I lived there. She really didn't want to get towed though. So I promised to pay if she got her car impounded. So I go to bed while she plays Mario Kart all night. Little did I realize she's an absolute freak at the game. I wake up early in the morning to find her passed out from a night of gaming. I fire up the GamerCube to play some Mario Kart with breakfast. Not aware she unlocked almost everything in the game. I proudly proclaim, "You got towed." Barely awake she responds, "I got towed? Yeah. You got towed last night while I was sleeping. I can't believe it. I got towed. Yeah. Don't you remember?" She frantically checks behind the blinds to look outside at the parking lot. "I didn't get towed. Yeah. You got towed and Toadette last night." One of our best moments for sure. Around 42 years ago, my little brother was playing with matches and set the woods on fire. Burned about 10 acres. Everyone assumed that it was me smoking in the woods, so he and I just let it be me. I took the blame and the ass whooping because dad was kinda rough on the ass whoopings when he was mad, and I didn't want my little brother to have to take it. Being that dad got a little carried away this time, broke my arm. We've just never told anyone the truth. I had a chat with one of the most notorious pedophiles in my country. It was odd. He spoke in a way that made it seem like he was my age. I was 7. He eventually tried to trick me into touching his D by buying me a hot dog and a soda. I only declined and bailed because I was low-key offended that he put mustard on the hot dog he was offering me. I started doing one of those 5K running apps. On this app, the trainer is named Erin. She coaches you through each training session. I've never been a runner and now can do a solid 5K. But anyway, Erin told me that I've got to have a mantra. Something I can repeat to myself when I want to give up. Her mantra is "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." I could never come up with anything better, so now my mantra is "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." My name isn't even close to Erin, but it doesn't feel right using my own name at this point. I'm surprised how often I want to give up on things and automatically think "You're strong, Erin. Be strong." Edit. Guys, I am so overwhelmed and touched by these replies. Gold and silver and wholesome. Oh my. We are all strong Erins. In 6th grade one night I was like, I really don't feel like going to school tomorrow. So I looked up how to get a fever. I found a tutorial that said to take a bath at the hottest temperature your bathtub will go, and then stay up all night. I decided to try it and I started the water for a steaming hot bath. It stung to get in it, and I somehow survived it for 30 minutes. When I was getting out I felt dizzy and then I fell on the floor and had a seizure. I woke up and saw the blinding ceiling lights of the bathroom and the first thing I thought was, am I dead? And then I threw up in the toilet next to me and had a migraine for the night. And later found out I got 1st-degree burns. So long story short, don't do that. I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Western Samoa. One weekend several of my fellow volunteers and I went camping on this tiny private island. On the 1st or 2nd night, we made a bonfire and all got super drunk, then went skinny dipping. The water was only about chest deep, warm and still. There was no light pollution, so the stars were blazingly bright. We also inadvertently kicked up some bioluminescence, filling the water with stars, tipsily floating naked in the warm sea, completely surrounded on all sides by stars. And close friends is one of my most beautiful and euphoric memories. I've told this on Reddit before but never in person. So I was at a water park with a girl I had a huge crush on and some of our mutual friends. I'm not a big fan of rides. She had been trying to talk me into going on one all day, and I finally agreed to try out this one really intense looking slide. Basically you go down the slide while sitting on this big inflatable thing, and it was for 2 people, so naturally I got paired up with the girl I had a crush on. We both climbed into the inflatable, which had these little handles on it for you to hold onto when you went down. When we went down the slide, it was way faster than I thought it would be. I accidentally let go of one of the handles, tried to grab it again, and ended up grabbing her hand instead by accident. I was really embarrassed, but she put her other hand on top of mine until we reached the bottom. I guess she thought I was scared, which is also kinda embarrassing, but it was a nice moment. She later went on to be my first kiss about 6 months later, and we're still close friends today. When I was about 14 I found a slingshot in the woods. It was a pretty good slingshot that must have cost a fair bit as it had a metal frame and a thick rubber sling. One day my friend and I were on top of a hill out in the countryside and a jogger came running out of the nearby tree line. He was some distance away and below us. Without putting a lot of thought into it I shot a stone just above his head. The rock went exactly where I wanted it to, but if there was wind, or my aim was off, or 1,000 other factors, I would have seriously ducked that jogger up. I muse on that at least once a week. I never see my friend and we haven't spoken about it since it happened. Back when I was in high school, I wanted to approach this girl on a bus on my way to school. She was really hot and I knew I'd regret it if I didn't approach her. There was one big problem. There was a middle-aged lady seated next to her and I couldn't talk to this girl with the lady right next to her. I had to think of a quick way to get rid of the lady. I then woke up from my seat, slowly walked to the row they were seated and calmly asked the lady, "Excuse me mom, could you please let me sit next to my sister?" Turns out the lady was the girl's mom. My aunt was forced to hand her kids over to her alcoholic ex for a weekend visitation, but she was terrified he'd hurt them, so she sent me with them. I was 7 or maybe 8. They were 2 and 4. I thought myself so much older and decided it was the responsible thing to do, so I went. While at his apartment, he got wasted and called my aunt and told her he was going to throw them off his very high balcony. They were asleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. I sat up all night, no small feat at that age, to make sure he didn't kill my baby cousins. Nobody knows. I think about it daily and wonder if it's why I have panic disorder. I wish there were better ways to protect kids and separations. I can't believe all the love. Holy, you guys are awesome. I considered deleting this in case my cousins ever saw it, but thankfully, I don't think they could possibly remember this. Thanks for my first ever awards. I found out when I was 28 that my dad's side of the family had been in the witness protection program my entire life, and that their names were not what I had been told. I moved to the UK from Zimbabwe when I was 4. The first few years my parents spent their whole time trying to settle down. By the time I was 8 they realized we had never been to London. So on a hot June day we went into London. We went to the aquarium, Covent Garden to see all the performers. On the London Eye. It was a good day. To end the day we went to Buckingham Palace. I was tired, so I was resting my head against the bars asking all the questions you'd expect from an 8-year-old. After a while my parents said it was time to go. I pushed away from the bars and then felt the cold steel against the back of my ears. I hadn't noticed my head had slipped through. I panicked. A crowd gathered. I'm probably in many a family photo album. Even a horse guard came to see what the commission was about. Bet he wasn't expecting a child with his head stuck. By then I had accepted this as my new home, but I couldn't figure out how I'd go to sleep with a spike on the floor. Luckily an old lady had a tub of Vaseline in her handbag and my dad was able to pull me out with my head smothered in Vaseline. When I was in kindergarten I fell asleep on the bus to school. No one woke me up. I wake up eventually and the bus is empty. I panic, as any 5-year-old does. and run to the front of the bus and try the door. It's locked. It was parked in a KFC parking lot, so people were coming in and out of the building. I started wailing with terror, banging on the glass doors, snot pouring down my face and into my mouth as people walk by and point at me. They mumbled and got into their car and left. By the time the bus driver finally came back out with her chicken meal, the entire door was covered in my slobber and tears. She instructed me how to open the closed door so she didn't have to put her meal down. I was still freaking out obviously and didn't understand. So she sighed, put her food down and finally opened the door and asked me what was I doing there. She called the school and drove me there, still covered in snot. I remember walking into my class with everyone standing in a line and hugging me one at a time. After that day, they made a rule for all bus drivers to get up and walk the bus front to back to make sure no kids get left sleeping. In the summer of 2007 I was working my landscaping job when I heard my cell ringing in the truck. My girlfriend at the time told me that they were saying that my brother is dead. Fast forward through a panic drive that I shouldn't have done to my mom's house. She answers the door and crumbles into my arms. I'm stunned. They leave to the cop station and moments after leaving I get a phone call on my mom's phone. It's the guy that was with him, that we're thinking had something to do with his death. He plays stupid and wants inside information on whether or not he's being blamed. He hit him with his truck, killing him instantly. Said in court eventually that he looked at the dash and thought he had hit a deer. They had been witnessed having a fight earlier that day, without being able to prove intent, and no OJ. Lawyer. He got 4 months in jail. We drove to a neighboring city to deliver the bad news to his 9-year-old daughter. I'll never forget the sound of her cries. My brother was, well, my brother. Sharing this has always helped me move on bit by bit. Thanks for reading. Edit. My first gold silver and wow this blew up. Thank you for the warm words everyone and for the gold silver kind strangers. I nearly died at work. I was removing the main supply, 200V, 3P, wire on the machine we just successfully overhauled. The problem is, I wasn't aware that the main circuit breaker was still turned on. I already had the gut feeling to check the breaker, but I was stubborn and proceed to remove the wires. As I removed the second wire, I accidentally short-circuited it, creating a huge spark right in front of my eyes. First thing I did was to check my hand, which was thankfully unharmed but had visible dark spots due to the strong electric current on the short-circuiting of the wires. Good thing I was half conscious and went on to turn off the main circuit breaker. Some of my workmates saw and approached me while asking if everything was alright. After removing the wire, I took a walk and had a deep thought what might happen to me if those wires touched me. I might have suffered a severe 3rd-degree burn, or lose a limb, or died from electrocution. Folks, always be careful and always trust your gut feeling. I keep Miss X's life private eye roll, so I have never told anyone about the one and only time I had sex in public, and subsequently the one and only time I got caught having sex by someone in an airplane. My BF and I were out at the deserted quarry on the edge of town and we were going at it when a little 2-seater plane flew overhead. The plane then proceeded to turn around and fly over us again, this time dipping, wiggling its wings when it was overhead. My father seldom spoke of his wartime experiences. I've only heard 2 direct stories from his mouth. He once recounted how his brother, they fought together, was shot and later died from infection. The other memory was of his desertion. During a battle, he hurt his wrist from falling and sat there in the mud, wincing in pain and catching his breath. As he peered out, seeing all the death and destruction, he was suddenly hit with an intense feeling of futility. And not just mere futility, but he realized also the absurdity of it all. I got up and just walked away, he said, leaving my weapon right there on the ground. He disappeared into the surrounding woods, somehow managing to get back home, which was nearly 300 miles away. Weren't you worried about getting in trouble? I asked in all my childlike innocence. He explained that things were desperate by the time he entered the war. He was underage, so he lied about his name and age in order to enlist. He received little to no training and was immediately thrust into action. They had nothing on me, he said. I enlisted with little more than a handshake. Although he was ineligible to receive a pension because of his false and or lacking records, I'm under the impression he never would have accepted such. He was ashamed of that part of history and developed a profound distaste for government. This story was kept pretty hushed in our family as we didn't want the surrounding community to know of his desertion and label him a coward. Capital I, however, always admired him for doing what he did. I grew up in a very conservative household. Sex was never talked about at all. And you knew if you got caught with something you shouldn't, you'd be in giant trouble. When I was 17 I bought a vibrator. I had literally no experience, even alone, but was super curious. The way it worked was you had to screw the bottom off it on to keep the batteries in and to turn it on. I put it underneath my bed and thought I had it unscrewed enough that it would stay off until later. Well, I'm downstairs listening to a CD player with my headphones on, and suddenly I hear my 2 young sisters yelling about something and running around the house. I take my headphones off and I hear BZZZZZZ echoing through the house. My room was directly above the living room, and my floor was wooden. They're feeling out, thinking there's a wasp in the house or something electrical is about to explode. Thank God my parents weren't home. They probably would have figured it out a lot easier. One sister runs upstairs, realizes it's coming from my room, and I dash ahead of her and just throw myself over the bed to feel underneath it. I turn off the vibrator and then tell them my old phone was under there and must have had an alarm on it, which made no sense. It had been months since I changed phones. They don't believe me and think it must be the pipes under my room. They tell my parents when they get home that the pipes freaked out. My family listens closely for months to see if we need to call a plumber. I decided to take my terrible secret to the grave, and then 10 years later post it on Reddit. The end. The night my son was born, my wife lost a lot of blood in an instant. Our delivery room was filled with 25 medical personnel after a rapid response call. My wife was white as a ghost and hardly coherent. I stood beside her holding her hand while she received emergency blood and plasma and platelets. I was in total shock in the moment, until my wife locked eyes with me and asked, "Am I dying?" I lost it. I'm losing it now typing this. It was the scariest moment of my entire life and I really have trouble reliving it. 8 months later, wife and baby are happy and healthy. Give birth in hospitals. You never know what can go wrong and the staff there saved her life that night. Found an online profile of someone in another country on a whim. Decided to go on vacation together. Didn't do any communication other than email. Got on 24h worth of flights. Met up and paddled off that day. We spent 26 days canoeing from the tundra to the Arctic and didn't see anyone else the whole time. Edit. Typo. I flew to Thailand on a whim with 2 co-workers in late 2001. We stayed at the Oriental 5-star hotel for a single night on a whim. Turned out the hotel was hosting the king's birthday party. We managed to secure tickets and tuxes due to the kindness of the staff. While the king wasn't in attendance, we got to meet the queen and one of the princesses. Hell of a night. 2014, it was my first night in college. My roommates, strangers, didn't show up. We lived in a 3-story apartment complex with 4 apartments each level in a freshman building. Well, the neighbors are partying and I get out of my comfort zone and walk outside. Outside, some guys are drinking and one of the guys invites me in to party and so begins my college experience. Lo and behold, I get wasted just like many of the others. I head back to my apartment on the same level and the party has moved slightly to my apartment, but there are just like 6 people there. I start asking people to leave as I'm going to bed, but I'm so drunk. I know I don't care if they stay or go. I go to my room and there is a guy crashed in it. I tell him he doesn't need to leave, but please move over and he does. I wake up and freak out because I have a boyfriend. I check to make sure we didn't have a 6. No, but you came into my apartment asking everyone to leave and told me I could stay in your bed and hopped in. Confused, I ask him to clarify. Dude, this isn't your apartment. Took about 30 seconds to realize I just arrived at the wrong apartment and slept in a stranger's bed. My first night in college. Not a loose copyright airing. I work at a cinema and while doing a general check that everything is operating smoothly, a peculiar movement caught my eye. This particular session was a Father's Day session for Pixels back in 2015. The entire crowd consisted entirely of fathers and their young children, except for the young couple ducking in the back row, or Innocent 16-year-old me, fresh on the job, was gobsmacked and I froze much like a deer in the headlights. I couldn't bring myself to give them the old "hey please stop ducking thanks," so the manager gave them the awkward tap on the shoulder. Cut to the end of the film. The manager and I are at the exit waiting to see the faces of the culprits. Straight out the door, operating at some serious pace, is my sister's best friend and her boyfriend. Both, surprisingly, were clearly in a great mood until she made eye contact with a stunned Ethiopian. No face has ever gone from all smiles to utter horror so quick. Edit. Grammar. Went to a weekend festival back in the 80s. Decided to duck a guy I had just met down on the rocks by the ocean. It was quite awesome actually. Warm summer air, getting down and sweaty. Cooled off by the occasional wave spraying us. Anyhow, as we finished we suddenly hear resounding applause from above. Look up and realize that we've put on a free show for a bunch of people sitting on a ledge above us. There was nothing to do but stand up, hold hands and take a bow. Not exactly a story you bring up in casual conversation. I've been itching to share this but couldn't really find a place to share. I call it the inconvenient man. So here I go. I own a grocery convenience store in a small town. So there's his man. An immigrant. Either Thai or Indonesian. Not really sure, but he come to my store about once a week to buy stuff. He always wear the same setup. A farmer's hat. A jacket. Unzipped. Shorts and flip-flops. Underneath his jacket he wear a small sling bag and t-shirt. Inside his sling bag, he has a phone and a wallet that is almost the same size as his sling bag. So every time he wanted to pay something, he has to get his wallet out from his sling bag. But because his wallet is so big, it's very difficult to take it out. So he has to undo his sling bag to make it easier. Then, because he wear his sling bag underneath his jacket, he has to take off his jacket and hat in order to take off his sling bag. After finish paying, he has to wear everything in order again. Also, he seems to put his money in random compartments in his wallet. It's not even organized. A few $1, $2, $5, $10 in this compartment, then a few $2.50 in that, and so on. It's so ducking frustrating to watch him do this every time. And for some ducking reason, he likes to buy stuff one at a time. Like once he finish buying one stuff, he'll walk out the store and return a few seconds later. Then he has to repeat the same process again. I swear to God, he took almost an hour to pay for 3 items.